Is it ADHD, is it autism, or is it trauma? As Dwayne The Rock Johnson famously said, "It doesn't matter. What matters is getting our needs met." Trigger warning, if you're fiercely protective of your diagnosis, processing the nuanced take in this video might be emotionally laborious for you. And warning, all discussion of diagnosis is secondhand as I am not a professional. Many of us embrace neurodivergence because it means we haven't just been failing at being people. And we react more negatively when people suggest we have trauma or a personality disorder. There appears to be an underlying belief that our needs are only valid if they're justified by the right diagnosis, whether by a professional or by ourselves. Neurotype versus trauma is an offshoot of another problematic binary, nature versus nurture, a neurotype being nature and trauma being nurture. If it's neurodivergence, we often believe we're not broken, and it's not our burden to fix ourselves, it's society's responsibility to accommodate us because we can only be seen as flawed if we're held to its standards. If it's trauma, we often think that something broke us, that can and should be fixed. And if we look hard enough into it, we'll find some form of abuse that can and should be blamed. And personality disorders are generally defined by how they negatively impact the self and others, and aren't commonly associated with characteristics considered harmless. So these diagnoses often cause us to demonize and invalidate our own needs, and find it reasonable for others to do the same. But we can't base how valid our needs are based on these diagnoses because they're not even fully understood. They aren't the empirical judgment of God himself, nor are they comparable to testing positive for lupus or having a CT scan that reveals a tumor. Maybe one day it will be commonplace to scan the brain for definitive markers of neurodivergence, and it'll become a diagnostic standard. But when that happens, the labels and their criteria will inevitably change. The experiences and behaviors we associate with diagnoses are real, but the diagnoses are not. They're more like genres. They're circles that fallible humans drew around a set of traits, and they change shape every day. For example, rigid thinking is an autistic trait, but it's also a trait of executive dysfunction and trauma. And Jurassic Park is considered an action-adventure, but I say it's also a straight-up horror movie. It's about an isolated group being hunted by monsters at night. Fight me. Even if our neurodivergence is assessed by an educated professional, that professional is making an educated guess based on these circles. The truth is a big, blurry mess of genes, environment, and trauma crashing into each other. PTSD can be considered neurodivergence. Genetics can traumatize people, and trauma can impact our genes. You heard right, kids, we can have trauma from shit that didn't even happen to us. It's called epigenetics. All of it is a part of us. Even the society that mistreats us because we, genetically and environmentally, are products of it. So in consideration of how messy all of this is, it's reasonable and our right to decide for ourselves the best way to frame our divergence and care for ourselves accordingly. And in turn, to respect that right in other neurodivergent people with similar experiences to choose a different route to self-care. Some people can't cope with their ADHD unless they see it as a gene-based neurotype. But for others, framing ADHD as a trauma response is more convincing and helpful. Some people see a personality disorder diagnosis as pure doom. Others have found great benefit in healing approaches associated with them. Some people choose to adapt to their job and their difficult boss. Some people say, "Fuck this, I quit." We decide what we want out of life, what aspects of our divergence are in our way, and whether or not a situation calls for being flexible about our needs. Others can't possibly grasp the amount of work that flexibility would take, or what tools and resources would be helpful to us, or what we're willing to do to get access to them, or whether or not the benefit of doing so would even be worth it. We are the only ones with all the relevant data, so it's both our right and our responsibility. Most of us are conditioned to believe that if we have any traits that are disruptive to others, we are obligated to change them unless we can prove that we can't do so. But rhetorical question, obligated by whom? Is the problem that other people believe this, or that we agree with them? Because there is a difference here that is vital to our mental health. It makes sense to defend or fight for our diagnosis if it's needed to acquire limited resources, like medication, therapy, or certain work accommodations. So if someone needs your diagnosis to provide those resources, that's valid. But if they won't respect your needs without a permission slip, just because they find them disruptive or inconvenient, fuck them. They can cry about it. We have the right to be a rock that they're just gonna have to steer around.
And you're about to smell what the rock is cooking.
A person who doesn't respect our boundaries that they don't like can be described with one word: asshole. Boundaries are a huge topic that warrants their own video, but the point is they need no diagnosis. No one has any right to see changing you as a viable option. That is not a power they have if we don't give it to them. We have options. We can adapt to our situation, change our situation, or pursue change within ourselves. We just can't change other people. Beyond that, everything is squishy. The question is, what makes the most sense to squish? And it's a personal one.